In the early hours of August 9th, 2013, a frantic 911 call came in from a desolate stretch of highway in rural Texas. The caller sounded terrified, confused, and out of breath. He claimed he was being chased. He said someone was after him then, without warning. The call ended. The man was never seen again. His name was Brandon Lawson, and his disappearance would become one of the most unsettling unsolved cases in modern American true crime. Brandon was 26 years old, a father of 4. He lived in San Angelo, Texas, and worked long hours in the oil fields. Those close to him said he had been struggling financially, emotionally, and physically, but he was devoted to his children and had no history of vanishing without contact. On the night he disappeared, Brandon had been arguing with his girlfriend just after midnight. He left the house in his pickup truck. He was driving north on Highway 277 toward Bronte, Texas, a dark, isolated road surrounded by fields, oil rigs, and almost nothing else, at approximately 12:38 a.m. Brandon called his brother Kyle. He told him his truck had run out of gas. Kyle offered to bring fuel, but Brandon sounded strange. Panicked, he said he was being chased by someone. He claimed there were Mexicans after him, a statement that would later cause controversy, confusion, and speculation. Kyle urged him to stay on the phone, but Brandon hung up minutes later. Brandon dialed 911. The call would last just over 13 minutes. What Brandon said during that call is one of the most debated recordings in true crime history. At first, his words were hard to understand. He sounded breathless, as if running. He told the dispatcher he was in the middle of a field. He said someone was following him. He repeatedly asked for help. At one point, he said, "Yes, I'm in the middle of a field." Then later, "I see them." The dispatcher asked who was after him. Brandon responded with something chilling. "The first guy ran up on me. I ran away from him." Throughout the call, Brandon seemed disoriented. He struggled to explain where he was. His voice shifted between fear and urgency. He never screamed, but the panic was unmistakable. Then, abruptly, the line went dead. When Kyle arrived at the location Brandon had described, he found his brother's truck parked on the shoulder of the highway. The engine was off. The gas gauge wasn't completely empty. Brandon was nowhere to be found. His phone was dead. Law enforcement arrived and began searching. The area immediately they brought in dogs, helicopters, volunteers. But the terrain was difficult. Thick brush, uneven ground, oil equipment, and private land. Despite days of searching, there was no sign of Brandon, no blood, no clothing, no footprints, nothing. As the investigation continued, theories began to form and fracture. Some believed Brandon was experiencing paranoia or hallucinations, possibly caused by exhaustion or substance use. Others rejected that idea entirely, pointing out that Brandon was coherent enough to call for help and describe his surroundings. Then there was the 911 call itself for years. The audio was considered unintelligible, but as technology improved, independent analysts began enhancing the recording. What they claimed to hear shocked many people. According to some interpretations, Brandon may have said, "I'm bleeding." Others believe he said, "I ran into them." Some even claimed to hear background voices that were not Brandon's. Law enforcement disputes these interpretations, stating that no clear evidence supports the presence of anyone else on the call, but doubt remains. In 2019, 6 years after Brandon vanished, something unexpected happened. His clothing was discovered. A pair of jeans and boots were found less than a mile from where his truck had been abandoned. They showed signs of wear, but no clear damage. No human remains were found nearby. The discovery raised more questions than answers. If Brandon died of exposure, why were his remains never found? If he encountered someone that night, who were they? And why was there no evidence of a struggle? And perhaps most disturbing of all, how could someone disappear so completely? After calling for help in an area that was searched repeatedly, to this day, Brandon Lawson's case remains unsolved. Some believe he wandered into the wilderness and succumbed to the elements. Others believe he encountered foul play and his body was deliberately hidden. His family refuses to give up hope. They continue to search, continue to listen, continue to ask the same question America has been asking for over a decade. What really happened to Brandon Lawson that night on Highway 277? And why did his final call for help go unanswered? When investigators reviewed Brandon Lawson's final movements, one detail immediately stood out. His truck hadn't actually run out of gas. The fuel gauge showed there was still gas left in the tank. Not much, but enough to keep driving. This raised an uncomfortable question. If Brandon wasn't truly stranded, why did he stop, and why did he abandon the vehicle so abruptly? Kyle Lawson has said his brother sounded terrified, not confused. He wasn't slurring his words. He wasn't rambling. He was describing something happening in real time. And then there was the location for years. Law enforcement believed Brandon had wandered south into open farmland, but later analysis of cell tower data suggested he may have gone in the opposite direction, toward a heavily wooded area filled with oil equipment, pipelines, and uneven terrain. Areas that were not fully searched. This revelation reopened the case for many who had begun to lose hope. As audio enhancement technology improved, independent analysts began re-examining Brandon's 911 call frame by frame, syllable by syllable. What they claimed to hear sent chills through the true crime community. Some believed Brandon said, "I'm bleeding." Others believed he said, "I ran into them." And then there was the most unsettling interpretation of all, a voice not Brandon's. A faint, distorted background voice that some listeners believe can be heard responding to him. Law enforcement has repeatedly stated that they do not believe anyone else was present during the call, but they also admit the audio quality is poor, and the recording is open to interpretation. The ambiguity is part of what makes the case so disturbing. If Brandon was alone, then what caused such intense fear? If he wasn't alone, then who was there? And why was no evidence ever found? In 2017, the case took another strange turn. A private investigator suggested that Brandon may have fallen into a shallow body of water or a concealed depression, one that could have hidden remains for years. This theory gained traction when searchers discovered several water-filled areas near the highway that had not been examined during the initial searches. But again, nothing was found. Then came the discovery in 2019. Brandon S. jeans and boots were found less than a mile from where his truck had been abandoned. The items were located in a field that had been searched multiple times in the past. The discovery shocked his family. How could clothing appear years later in an area that had already been combed by volunteers, dogs, and law enforcement? Some believe the clothing had been there all along, hidden by vegetation. Others believe it was moved, either by animals or by someone else. What made the discovery even more unsettling was what wasn't found: no bones, no skull. No personal items like a wallet or phone, just the clothes, and no clear signs of trauma, to this day. Investigators have not confirmed whether the clothing discovery brings the case closer to resolutio. And all further into mystery, another theory suggests Brandon may have encountered someone working illegally in the oil fields or along the highway that night. Highway 277 has long been rumored to host undocumented laborers, transient workers, and individuals moving through the area unnoticed. But again, no witnesses have ever come forward. Others believe Brandon may have suffered a medical emergency, dehydration, exhaustion, a panic-induced episode. But even those explanations struggle to account for his coherent phone calls, his awareness of being followed, and the lack of physical evidence. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of the case is the dispatcher's role. Brandon stayed on the line for over 13 minutes. He was asking for help. He was trying to explain where he was. But the dispatcher never sent immediate aid to his exact location. By the time responders arrived, Brandon was already gone. Whether minutes mattered that night is impossible to know. What is known is that Brandon Lawson vanished after doing exactly what people are told to do in an emergency. He called for help. More than a decade later, his family continues to push for answers. They release enhanced audio. They organize searches. They keep his name alive. Because without attention, cases like this fade, and when cases fade, answers disappear with them. Somewhere along Highway 277, something happened in the darkness that night. Something that caused a man to flee his vehicle, call 911 in terror. and vanish without leaving a trace, whether it was fear, confusion, or something far more sinister. The truth remains buried. And until it's uncovered, Brandon Lawson's final words will continue to echo unanswered across the Texas plains.